Were you pressured by any other organizations in the area, religious organizations?
I would say certain business owners in the local area that were under the impression that we were something we were not, even though we kind of tried to explain it. They didn't want to serve us. They didn't want us in their establishment. Had a couple arguments, couple blowouts here and there. And then it was mostly just a lot of pressure from, well, you know, I have already explained the other issues with the media and the other issues we had to face, but it seemed like the people who hated us really hated us, and the people who loved us were really, really loving us. But the negative side, I wouldn't say it was any organizations, but there were certain individuals, and it wasn't very, you know, it's easy to say, it's easy to shrug them off, but there were still some people that had some pretty negative things to say, and in person and even online. So yeah.
What kind of things would they say?
Well, online, I had a lady come on Facebook, and well, a lot of people would say things. It's a lot of it towards me, and which is really kind of strange because I'm not doing the snuggling. Just because I opened a business doesn't mean I am the business. But they'd say, "Oh, he's a con man. He's a snake oil salesman. he's a sleazeball," and those are all surface things. But some of the things, when like the business that wouldn't let us come in and wouldn't serve us, that was just really kind of, I don't know, I just thought it was just wrong. And the looks that some of the staff would get, and we would get walking to our place, like people like, "Oh, that's them," like, but it's not everybody. It's just a few here and there, but everybody kind of felt it, and that's why our staff most of them kind of moseyed on their way, and
There's only so much you can take.
Well, yeah. When you put something on the news and you put it even higher than that, and it doesn't matter what it is, if it's only looked at in the negative light, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to buy into that, and they're going to say, "Oh, those people, you definitely go after them." It doesn't matter what their real driving force was. It's what you see, and you're thinking, "I've had a bad day, and that creep is doing that business. I just want him to shut down." It's just the way human nature is.
Especially for doing something as simple as having a place where people can...
Yeah.
If you remove the term snuggle
Mm-hmm.
for a moment,
Yeah.
and just think of it as two people holding one another.
Yeah.
I mean, there's, believe it or not, there's negative connotation with the term snuggle.
Yeah, there are.
It automatically sounds intimate. And
It actually is intimate. It is an intimate setting, just like you could have an intimate conversation with somebody, because you're kind of like, if you and I got together 1 foot closer, we'd be in that intimate space. Anywhere in that space is kind of intimate. So it is intimate in that way, but it's also non-sexual, and that's part of the process, is actually being able to get into a space where you can feel comfortable with somebody on that level. And then that's when a lot of the oxytocin and all that stuff, and that stuff can happen. Like I always think of I have a doctor here in Spring Green, and he's amazing, and when I have to go see him, he's also an osteopath, and sometimes he'll crack you up and do this a little bit, but it feels so good sometimes just to have somebody connect with you, because you don't get that very much in this society anymore. You see people doing this all day, but how many hugs do you get every day, right?
it's a very good point.
Yeah.
There were restrictions online very explicitly stated
Yes.
as far as what's appropriate and what's not appropriate.
Yes.
Customers did have to sign agreements.
That's right.
They went through background checks.
Correct.
I assume if background check came up a little sketchy.
Yeah, we didn't usually take those clients because we were, hypersensitive we just didn't want to open any doors.
Were there any negative occurrences or instances that took place?
Yes, we had one gentleman that came up, and fortunately, you know, our staff had been trained inside and out what to do for pretty much anything that could happen. So what happened is Jennifer took the appointment in. Lonnie was watching the camera, and the guy just asked for, you know, he asked for something sexual, which is inappropriate. He already signed the agreement. He knew that the rules. So Jennifer said no, and unfortunately the session's over because that's part of our contract. You knew that. You stated that you knew that. You signed it, so we're done. So she got up, and then he had to change from his pajamas back into his his business clothes, and then Lonnie came out. He saw on the camera that the session was over, so he came and he asked the guy to leave, and that was that. So it was a verbal implied thing, but we have a zero tolerance policy, so that was the only thing that ever happened. Other than that, everything was perfect.
So no physical danger?
No.
Sexual danger?
No. The guy wasn't like a shark or anything. He may have been, but he tried verbally, and that was the end of it. It was shut down, and he was asked to leave, so yeah. Yeah.
So every room had cameras?
Every room had cameras.
Audio?
No audio, just visual camera, but there was also a panic button that the snugglers actually carried. So if she pushed that, I think it's, what is it, like 800 decibels or something, but it's kind of a piercing. It's
an alarm.
Yeah, it pretty much goes off. You can hear it next door and all that, but.
And was that used at all?
No. I couldn't see. You'd have to have a real predator in there to want to, and it would be a bad day for them because it's just not going to happen.
And there was always somebody watching the cameras?
Always, yes.
So the idea of physical violence or sexual violence wasn't really something that people had to worry about?
I don't think so. Like I said, you could get a real nutcase that could, but then again, they got to get through their background check, and usually, people don't just go nuts out of nowhere. It seems like maybe they've done it before, so.
Why do you think so many people had this aversion to the Snuggle House?
I think because it's so new. When you look at the cuddle movement, and it is kind of a movement, and that's why there's also a movie coming out, and they filmed at our place for it. But when you look at cuddling, it falls in this middle ground that doesn't really exist, because in our culture it's either, let's say if you and I are sitting talking at a bar, if we get any closer than this, then it's automatically like we're going to have sex. That's the culture, is always like there's this and there's this, and that's all that exists. Even it was even stated in the article that just came out. The city attorney, she said, no offense to men, but I can't see any man that would pay for just a snuggle. See, that's the mindset, though. And maybe for some people that's true, but I think for a growing percentage of the population, that's no longer true because we're so deprived of any form of touch.
And that was a woman that said that?
Yes.
Do you think that men are apt to believe the same idea?
I think yes. I think you have a mindset. It's like a paradigm shift. I think the cuddle movement is a new paradigm shift, and that every time a new paradigm comes in, there's always a revolution of the old. The old one usually has a kind of like the war against it because it wants to maintain its rigid belief system, but it's just not true anymore. I mean, there is a time and a place for sex, and there's a time and a place for everything else. Massage and, you name it. Everything has a place. And cuddling has a really powerful place, too. So, just because we close down doesn't mean it's going to stop. I mean, it's going to keep going, and other people are going to spring open businesses and all throughout the country. It's going to keep going.
I hope it does.
Yeah.
Ultimately, why did you close?
Well, I closed the Snuggle House because the first round of media, it did a tremendous amount of damage when it was implied that it was a prostitution ring. A horrible amount of damage. I should have closed right then and there, honestly. But when we thought it was all over with and we were just starting to build momentum, and I was finally starting to be excited about, the future of where we could go with this. Another, the guy from the Associated Press wanted to run a story, and the whole story was about, here's this guy, this is you. You've bankrupted. You used to be this. You did this. You did this. You did this. You did this. And also, the city's going to do a sting operation on you. They're talking about it and this and that. And I said, well, that's really nice, because what it says is Matthew's a scumbag, and here's what he's doing wrong, because obviously he has to be doing something wrong. Otherwise, why would the city be doing a sting operation on him? And I was like, well, that just looks so horrible. And I said, you know what? I'm going to call my attorney. And I told my attorney, I said, I'm done. I'm done. I don't want to pay you another, series of money to help me deal with all this. And then they'll come back and do it again and again and again. I think the time is not right in this area, obviously in that area, the Madison area. And even when you look online, you see that they're busy drafting up an ordinance for all touch, So they're going to put an ordinance on snuggling somehow, but I'm glad I got out. Let's put it that way.
You kind of pioneered a movement in Madison, though. You're causing the city to create ordinances.
Yeah, it might not be a good thing. We'll see.
So this, you said you had been contacted by the Associated Press.
Yeah.
And they wanted to essentially...
Well, they wanted to tell a story.
Slander.
I would call it defamation or, libel in print, whatever you call it. But, the other part of the allegation was they wanted to put in the original story that the city attorney's office said 2 of the snugglers quit because they didn't get paid. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. Would the real story be more like 2 of them stepped down because there were no sessions so they couldn't earn any income? Or is it that they didn't get paid because I paid everybody? So for everything that was done, people got paid. And so I thought, well, that's just another thing. It's like they want to talk about the bankruptcies. Well, by the way, Walt Disney bankrupted 7 times. And I do have a company that makes millions of dollars, so who cares if I bankrupted? It's part of the game. Every self-made millionaire, 90% of them have bankrupted. So whoop-de-doo. But they want to point the story. Hey, this guy bankrupted. First, they tried to say I owed back taxes, too. That was the first media thing. And I actually got a letter from the IRS stating I didn't owe any, but they're not going to run that story. But, the first thing that came out was this guy bankrupted. He owes the city of Madison $10,000+. He's used to be a stripper, of all things, so he's obviously, going to open up a prostitution ring, because why wouldn't he not? And, it got worse from there. I mean, I just, wow, like, okay, it's one way to put it.
So do you feel bullied?
Yes, I do. I feel, it reminds me of being bullied back when I was in, elementary school.
Elementary school?
Well, I got pretty big in high school. I was all-state hockey, so nobody really bullied me back then. But in elementary school, their bullies got to me.
I have a question that's really off base.
Okay.
But I want to ask it so that people know.
Yeah.
If there are any gift certificates that are purchased,
yes,
will they be refunded?
Yes, they'll be refunded, and we did take some deposits, and those will be refunded as well. So, yeah, I mean, we just want to kind of, we're done. Towels down. Okay. Yeah.
Did you receive any threats while being open?
Well,
either personally or as a business?
No, just kind of ridiculous things, like people saying they wanted to come sit outside, and they're going to come sit outside and watch people go in there and things like that, which is those are nobody cares about that. But it's not the stated threats, it's the I call it the smear campaign. That's going to hit you harder than any threats. I'm not worried about some lunatic saying shut down or I'm going to take you out, because that'll never happen. That's all talk. But every other week when the media is saying what a slime ball you are, I got kids. I'm a family guy. I don't like that. My mom doesn't like that, and my family doesn't like that. Nobody's perfect, but we could dig up the dirt on anybody and make them look in any way we wanted to. So.
Do you feel that the community or just specific people, do you feel hated?
By some people, yes. Yeah, like there was a girl that posted on the Facebook today, and she says, I can't believe any of those huggers would get in bed with that guy. He's such a con man. What a sleazeball. And I said, well, what do you know about him? And I didn't get a response back, but I thought, well, what do you know about me? You know.
And she's never met you?
Well, no, she's apparently in Oshkosh. That's where her Facebook thing says she's from. So, I mean, I didn't know that was legal to call people all sorts of names on their Facebook. I thought Facebook is kind of a place is a public place. You don't like defame people. And I mean, yeah, you can, but when it has to do with a business and a person's reputation in a business setting, I think that's defamation. So
there's a lot of businesses that will edit their Facebook if they get harassed and things like that, and then the public, seeing that these comments are being erased, then they're like, oh, they've got something to hide.
Oh, sure.
It's really kind of a no-win situation.
Yeah, it's a no-win situation.
When you're on the forum.
Yeah, it's the Wild West on the internet anyway, so it's hard to know what to believe. I mean, there's a lot of stories about everything, so.
Yes, there are. And there are a lot of supporters of the Snuggle House.
Yes.
And believers in touch therapy.
Yes.
Do you see yourself opening another Snuggle House elsewhere? You
know, I was really torn about this whole thing because I'm a businessman and I wanted to franchise the idea. Because I figured, well, you know, I've done all this 15 grand in legal fees to write up all kinds of documents and protocols, and I've created this manual. I thought, you know, we could offer people these blueprints and they could, you know, save themselves a lot of money and they could just open these up anywhere. And I thought, this is a great idea for the right communities in the right places. Not for everybody, but for the people who need it, make it available. And a lot of the supporters, you know, they didn't want us to throw the towel in. And, you know, to let all the other snugglers off the hook, they didn't throw the towel in. I threw the towel in. You know, nobody wanted to not do this. But from a business standpoint, you know, I do own other businesses, and when my reputation is constantly being attacked, and it's all attacking the peripheral of the business. It's always the peripheral. That's the whole game. It's, you know, look at this, look at that, look at this, look at that, but it's never look at what's happening inside the session. It's never that, because nothing bad is happening inside the session. It's really actually kind of a good thing. Nobody would go there if they didn't want to be snuggled. And it's not like we're reaching out and grabbing people.
Do you feel that if something changed today, maybe people backed off, that you would reopen it?
Not me personally. Not in Madison. Never.
Never.
I don't think I'd open any business in that area, to be honest with you. I like it out where I live in the country, and everything else I do is online. And I don't know, if somebody wanted to open the Snuggle House in Madison, they could have the blueprints, they could have everything we put in motion. I'd be more than happy to give it to them, let them run with it. I just personally, I'm at my limit. I backed out.
You had stated on Facebook something along the lines of, it's not worth it.
No, not to me. It's really not. It's very emotionally damaging when, you know, when I look at my life was hard enough as it is. I mean, I've had a very hard life. That's why I celebrate all my success, and every day I celebrate it. But the thing is it makes it, when it's constantly brought up and it's like pointed at you like you're bad because of what you did and went through, you know, who are they to judge? You know, you can't judge me. Nobody can. I don't judge them, you know. Everybody has a right to do their thing, because the bottom line is I didn't break any laws, I didn't do anything that wasn't right. And at the end of the day, I thought that's what mattered. You know, I mean, everything was on the straight and narrow. That's what we were about, snuggling, and there were no laws. I mean, I had a attorney do all the research to make sure we could do this before we even opened. So we were kind of prepared. You know, they said we didn't have a blueprint, but we did quite a bit of legwork before we actually stepped into the arena.
And how much time and energy, I don't want to ask you how much money you spent on this, but factoring in everything,
yeah,
the phone calls, the emails,
yeah,
how would you rate that?
I look at it, this is how I look at it. I had to try to save face internally for my own emotional conflict of how I could make this a positive for me. So I looked at it as my life is so blessed, because it truly is, that I wanted to donate all of our assets and give it to people so that at the end of the day, I could say that something good happened at the end of the day. So that's kind of how I kind of resolved my own anger and all the other things I was feeling. So at the end of the day, I'm happy. I'm kind of content right now.
So you have some good leads on places that you can donate?
Yeah, we've been getting a lot of requests, and my wife is handling it. So probably this week, by the end of the week, it'll all be gone. So
awesome.
Yeah,
that's
it's something.
Yeah.
It allows a person to say, hey, at least something good came out of this, because otherwise I wasn't feeling very good about it. I felt like, you know, it just was, you know, like, what did I do? You know, like, what did I get myself into, you know?
Do you feel like, is there any part of you that's kind of fearful that you may be potentially giving, you know, donations to a non-supporter, perhaps someone that was?
Could care less. No, I could care less. Honestly, if people need the things, because I put churches out there because usually they help people obtain some, and it doesn't have to be a church, but anywhere where it can get to the people that actually need it. You know, I've had people request, you know, like, hey, I need this extra bed in my house. And I'm thinking, well, you're not really that in need of it. You have a house. Some people don't have anything, and I'd prefer that they get it. So I don't care if they like Snuggly or not.